We're continuing the study of Parshat Noach, and I think either today or the next class we will actually finish Parshat Noach.
Wow.
We are on page 134, Breshit Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud, Genesis 11, verse 10. We've gone through the story of the Tower of Babel, and we're now going to count the generations after the flood until we get to Abraham, until we get to Abraham. So, page 134, 10, 11, 10, Ele, these, with a mapach. So a mapach is going to take what we have said before and focus it into something that is going to continue afterwards. Out of the various peoples who spread over the land after the flood, these were the ones who justified creation and their survival, as indicated by the shape of the reading mark. So, from everyone who has come before, these are the ones who are going to have at least enough importance to continue the world after, based on their merit, or to endanger the world based on their lack of merit. Nonetheless, they are going to be the examples for their generation, if we will. Toldot, generations. This has a munach, so a munach is a sharp demarcation from what's come from before, and then proceeding forward into what is going to be the natural flow, the natural order. Certain generations of that origin have produced offspring who acknowledge the heavenly rule and introduced it into their ways of living, as shown by the shape of the reading mark. So, what we're trying to say is these examples that we're bringing are people who did acknowledge some heavenliness in the way that they lived, which I think is very different from pretty well what all other Mefarshim say. All other Mefarshim basically, other than Shem and Aver, I don't think we really ascribe any goodness or godliness to anyone else in the generations after the flood.
Is that true? So.
Shem.
Just going back to Toldot. So are there? I thought Dor meant generations. Like
Dor is a generation. Laledet is to give birth. So Toldot are the things that come out of it, the things that literally were birthed by.
That are generated.
That are generated by.
But the record come.
Shem, number 3. The importance of Shem was that he was the one who carried into the future world the spiritual elements of Noach, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So Shem has a katon, a 2-part note, so he certainly brought with some of the higher elements with him, some of the concepts that Noach realized that there must be a God, and that's why he listened to him and built the ark. And Shem had that experience together with Noach on the ark, so he maintained some of that. The question is, what is the lower thing, the second thing that you say Shem had, and it's not explicitly written in the Parish, and I think we have to define some way in which he was either less than his father, or some way in which he had something else that was going on with him, and I think that remains cryptic. I don't think we defined that anywhere. Shem, again we say his name. These are the generations of Shem, and then we're saying Shem was so old. Shem, number 4, so we've repeated his name again. Just as Noach was a duplication of Adam, so was Shem a continuation of Noach. Therefore, not only is he mentioned first among his brothers, from the Yafet, but his name is quoted by adjacent duplication like that of his father, Noach, and then again we repeat Eila Toldot Noach, Noach ish tzaddik. So we say his name twice in the sentence, just like we said his father's name twice in the sentence, and he gets the importance of being mentioned first, indicating that he too was just, tzaddik, as stressed by the shape of the related reading mark. So this is a ma'apach. This is something that is going to take something that was before and focus it into what is going to go afterwards. And we're deriving from the fact that we have the name written twice, Shem, to allegorically say that it's Eila Toldot Noach, Noach ish tzaddik. We say Noach twice in that phrase as well, and we're going to carry forward that concept of Noach being a tzaddik, and we're going to say that it applies to Shem because we have this backwards looking and forwards focusing note of a ma'apach, which is going to grab that word tzaddik from before and move it forward to apply to Shem's philosophy of life. Comparing Shem to Abraham, Yaakov, and Moses, because again, all of these people have their name mentioned twice, once after the other in a sentence. Ben Ne'at, old 100. This has a munach, so this is going to sharply separate ourselves out from what's come from before and move us forward into what's going to go afterwards. At the age when he was old, 100, his character did not change, nor did he alter the basics of his ideology, as denoted by the shape of the reading mark. So we are saying that he continued after the way he was before. I'm not quite sure, again, what the demarcation here is, what the sharp separation here is, other than to say that when he was alone or not with children, he was different in that he wasn't going to be propagating anything to anyone else. And when he did have children and was allowed to pass along philosophy and ideals, that is a separate phase of life, and he remained the same in both of those separate phases. So that was the only way that I could see that there was a take of that sharp demarcation, just because his life stage had changed, his ability to pass on philosophy had not. Shana, year.
Actually, now you have someone to pass it on to.
With the katon, so this is a two-part note. On the contrary, with each year, Shem attempted to reach higher levels compared to the past, as suggested by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So we always try to take a katon and say that there are at least two things that are happening here, one perhaps better than the other, and what we're trying to say is each year he tried to improve on the year before. And later on, we will see that our forefathers did learn at various times with Shem and Aver, and there are various discussions of what you learn at the yeshiva of Shem and Aver. Most of them have to do with the natural order of the world and the acknowledgement of there being a creator, even without acknowledging the characteristics of the creator. So we seem to have most of the Mefarshanim tell us that Abraham really is unique in that he defined monotheism. So if that is the case, then Shem and Aver must not have been espousing monotheism. So they do point the way back but quite obviously they have some twists and turns or some false leads along the way, which does not allow them to have that recognition. Nonetheless, we do have a large body of midrashim that point to us that Yaakov and perhaps Abraham were influenced by the teaching of Shem and Ever. So
maybe Avram promulgated it, but they did in the yeshiva, and he was the disseminator.
No, I don't think any of the other people really say that Avram is publicizing the ideas of Shem and Ever. Nonetheless,
So what was their specialty?
So their specialty is knowing the natural cycle and order of things. And certainly, there are discussions about when Yaakov goes, when Yaakov leaves because Esav is going to kill him. He spends a large period of time, possibly as much as 14 years, learning with Shem and Ever. And the question is, what did he need to learn? He was with his father before that. What did he need to learn for 14 years then? So there are various midrashic discussions of what he learned there, and he certainly knows the rules and the ways of nature when he goes, because he knows how to pick animals and how to decide what is going to happen in terms of animal husbandry, in terms of selecting things for himself. And despite the fact that he's told to change the rules multiple times, he is still able to adapt to all of that. So that is perhaps one of the skills that he learned from Shem and Ever, and he's just given the dream from the angel to say, this is what's going to happen, you figure out what to do about it. So the angel doesn't specifically tell him, or the dream doesn't specifically tell him, do that. It just tells him, I see that all the sheep are going to come in this pattern. And then he's got to have the knowledge from somewhere to affect that. And that's what is ascribed to his learning at the yeshiva of Shem and Ever.
Also self-defense. He learned how to fight angels.
He learned how to fight angels. Agreed.
Shem and Ever, like Beit Shammai and Hillel, like they do. When they say Shem and Ever, there's the two schools, or
no,
they're not the same, are they?
Father and son. They teach the same thing.
Yeah.
That it's more a question of Shem and Ever, one generation after the other, that they continued the same pattern of learning. And
Shem and Ever is like biased, because the Beit, the Beit is not Joe Tenenbaum. It's two. He couldn't really give it to his father. He took Avram, right? Mm-hmm. Avram Yosef. He's Joe Yosef. Avram is his father. Did you know that? The same I told you, he found out that Shimshon Raphael Hirsch is Shimshon ben Raphael Hirsch.
That I did not know.
Yeah. And I heard that on Torah tape, where this guy comes, he's making a speech, and he's talking about Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. And after the speech, this guy comes up to him and says, no, it's Shamshon. I think I mentioned it. And he said, Shamshon, not Shimshon. And it's Ben Raphael. I said, how do you know? Because he was the grandson of the great guy who was named after him. And he said, that's how I know.
Cool. So, just to go a little farther in terms of the concept of what Shem and Ever did wrong, in terms of not being able to be at the level of Abraham, as far as monotheism, we see in Torah and Tanakh that idols still get one of God's name. They're still called Elokim. So they're Ovdei Elokim Achirim. They are people who are worshiping literally another Elokim. So how do they get a divine name?
What divine name?
Elokim.
I thought talking about Shem and
Vayiyelecha Elokim achirim al panav.
Right.
Elohim, Elohim.
But I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that on the tape. I'm just. I don't.
Sorry, it's Shem Hashem.
It's a shame. It's a Shem Hashem. Why do you think they get one of God's names?
Who? Shem and Aver?
False gods. Why do false gods get?
Why do you call it Elohim?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the idea is.
But it's false. I mean,
the idea is that you see things that do have power and that do lead to things happening in the world. And if you stop there and say that is the source of power, then you have given it power over you. So the ability to literally see around corners to say, but that has power, but where did it get its power from, is something that Shem and Aver probably lost. They probably said, the sun does this, the moon does this, the stars do this, weather does this, and so on, and they ascribed power to each and every one of those things, so they still had an intimate understanding of each and every one of these things, and that is something that they could pass on, and that intimate understanding still had importance in terms of how the world works and how to predict things. So when we talk about mazalot, when we talk about constellations or fortunes, usually the definition that we're talking about is the ability to see in the natural order of things exactly what is going to be the consequence of the current circumstance. So when God tells Abraham that he is going to be the father of many nations, but he's still Avram, he's still a different name at that time, his name hasn't changed. Avram says that he looked to the stars, and that he realized that with the name Avram and the nature of the world, he is never going to be able to achieve what God has told him that he's going to achieve. But God told him that he was going to do it. He believed in God, and God gave it. He thought that was literally an act of tzedakah, charitable thing. What's a charitable thing? When you give something without the expectation of getting anything back. So Abraham is giving credence to something that God has said, even though he really had no true way of predicting within this world that such a thing could ever happen to him. So literally he looked in the Mazalot, Avram, there's no way Avram is going to be the father of many nations. But he's still, if God said that it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. And that's one of the things that we say about ourselves as Jews, that we are above the natural order and cycle of things. That we have the ability, despite the fact that the mazal, the way that the world turns on itself, is going to predict something for us, that we have the ability to exceed that if we believe that we can, if we believe that God would give it to us. So this is always my expression when somebody says mazal tov to you. They're not telling you good luck. They're telling you, if you looked at the way that the world would unfold from this place naturally, then your beginning at this point should be that this good thing that has happened to you is just part of the natural order, and you can exceed that. You can supersede that. You can get more than that. So you're saying, Mazal Tov, this should be your beginning spot, and you should be able to get even more than this. So I think we digressed just because we wanted to talk about Shem and Aver, but I think we'll go back into the book now.
You also did Mefarshim. Is there a word like that? There's Mefarshim or Parshan. I never heard Mefarshim. Is that? I think you're being influenced by Kormach, because I never heard it with the Nun. That doesn't mean, or was it a slip? Or
No.
you stand by it?
Yeah.
You say it again. Say it again.
Parshanim? Yeah.
Parshanim. I've never heard that.
Okay. I will.
No, that doesn't mean anything.
I will look it
Have
up.
you heard of it? I've heard of it before, Shim
Yeah.
and Parshan, but it's sort of like you did both together. I like that. Even if not, you quote the phrase. Good. I like it.
Number 7, Vayolet with a tifcha. So this is going to look backwards at what's happened from before and pause slightly afterwards. And he produced. And again, a little bit of an interesting definition of Vayolet. Vayolet usually has the concept of giving birth to rather than producing, but
When you can see the man, what do you mean?
so well the question is why if he's trying to be very literal with his translations of words into English, why he changed it from something having to do with the birthing process into something more generic, and he produced. Nonetheless, we will go on. Number 7, when he considered himself to have accumulated sufficient experience and efficiency, he started an independent life, and he produced a son whom he hoped to raise by the achievements of his life experience and by the principles of practical empiricism, as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So, the son that he was going to have, he was going to take him back into all of the things that he had learned up until that point. Arpachshad, with Arpachshad, with the stabilizing Etnachta, in the expected cooperation with Arpachshad, who was his firstborn son, he decided to establish the implication of his own and his father's postulates, as expressed by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So, what we're saying with the Etnachta is that all of those stabilizing influences that Shem had and even that Noach had were what he attempted to inculcate into Arpachshad. And that is how he gives him the stability to move forward. Shnatayim, 2 years. Number 9. Did I miss one? No. Shnatayim, 2 years. It was 2 years since leaving the ark when Arpachshad was born. At that time, Shem was 100, but Noach was 603. Noach was 503 when Shem was born, following Yefet, as specified by the reverse direction of the reading mark. So this tipcha, looking backwards the 2 years, is trying to give us a historical reference in time so that we would be able to calculate out everybody else's ages and everybody else's circumstances based on this note looking backwards. Achar, after, with a mercha, so this is lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving us forward into what's going to go after. Since sex was forbidden in the ark, after leaving, reproductive life was reestablished, as illustrated by the directional shape of the reading mark. So, again, a fascinating little revelation that we get here, because Merchaz is a little bit connected to before, but mostly going forward. This was something that they had before, that had stopped during the time of the ark, and was going to continue into the world from that point afterwards. And all of that is derived from the Mercha. All of that is derived from the reading note on the word after.
And Hashem couldn't wait. He had his kid was 100. He couldn't wait till 500. Running wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The exuberance of youth. Hamabul, number 11. The flood, which has the Sof Pasuk, which gives stability. During the flood, intersexual relationships were suppressed, and males were separated from females. So the flood created a static world which was not going to grow or going to change, because there was no reproduction, and because we're defining the word achar to talk about reproduction, the mabul is going to be something that kept that concept of reproduction as something that was static and stable. So as we read through the sentence with exaggeration of the pauses that were there, I want you to notice that Vayoled and he produced has a little bit of a longer pause after it, and that is because he's going to take the stuff that he had from before, make it his own, and then give it to our Parshad. And Shnatayim, again, looking back at the time from before the flood, with an exaggerated pause after that, separating it out from the time after the flood, where normal reproduction was reestablished. And just the concept that we had introduced, even though it wasn't part of the Perush, that the first half of the sentence talks about higher spiritual ideas, and the second half of the sentence talks about lower, more physical concerns. So the first half, again, is talking about passing on philosophy and ideas and concepts, and the second half is talking about reproduction. So I think it fits.
That's your addition about.
So I think that fits. That is not part of the Perush per se, but I think it fits in very well with this pasuk.
That's yours?
That is not mine, but unfortunately I don't remember the source of where I had read it, but I have seen it before, so I think we'll continue to use it as a technique and to show where it seems to really shine. And this is one of the psukim where it seems to stand out. Eile toldot Shem ben me'at shana vayoled et arpachshad shnatayim achar hamabul. And I'm sorry, we had said that both the notes for Eile and Shem were ma'apach. In fact, they're not ma'apach, they're yativ. So we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between ma'apach and yativ. Ma'apach and yativ look exactly the same. Ma'apach is a joining note, a note that allows that word to flow into the next word. Yativ is a note that focuses you on that word, and separates itself out. It is a melech. It is something that separates itself out from what's come from before. The way that you know that you're dealing with the yativ is it is written before the very first vowel of the word. It comes to tell you that this is a backwards looking something, and you're going to stop there. So again, I'll read through the sentence, and we're going to perhaps try to emphasize that more. Eile toldot Shem ben me'at shana vayoled et arpachshad shnatayim achar hamavul. And we move along.
I just noticed that arpachshad is obviously compound. There's a lot of letters there. But the last three is like urkasim, it looks like. That's the area.
And oref is backwards looking, is the back part of your neck. Would it be with an iron? Yeah, that would be with iron, correct.
That's like
so, okay, so
What do you get?
Arpachshad, we're trying to see if there's anything we can do with the derivation of that name.
It seems to be almost a Persian name.
Yeah, that's foreign language.
We don't go by Persian, but Persian comes from the Hebrew. Everything comes from in call it
If it's an Aryan language.
no, but you got my point. All the languages
Listen,
come from-
I get the point, but it's not something that I think we have the skill to define the derivation here.
I first of all, I just started with the last three. You started with Orif. I didn't do that because I don't know that one yet. I'll come up with something, but.
Sorry, but Eila and Shem that's the Mahapach and the
That's the Yativ. Both of them are Yativ.
Because both of them are Yativ, because they're before the...
Yeah.
Okay.
And Yativ, even though it's shaped like a Mahapach, is cantilated like a Pashta.
The word Yativ in Aramaic means to sit.
So literally, you take that word and you rest with it for a minute. It stands by itself. You sit with it for a while. Vayechi Shem, and he lived Shem with a Revi'i.